take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Extendivite really works. Just listen to what some people have to say.
Several years ago, I was developing a very severe situation. I called it my flippy heart. It was doing not good things, and I did not want to go to a medical doctor because I just knew they would give me a cover-up pill. I didn't want to get onto that sort of thing at all. When I learned it was garlic and cayenne is a healer. It is a wonderful herb. I said, I think I'm onto something here. I'll tell you, I wouldn't be without it. It did wonderful things for me.
Extendivite is only $69.95 for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid. Call now. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
And
it is live.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to Stargate to the Cosmos. I'm your host, Janet Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. Our producer is the world-famous Thomas Becker, and we're on Revolution Radio. And our guest today is Penny Bradley. And Penny Bradley survived mind fracture at Langley and has reintegrated 300 of 2,200 altars the CIA created. Those altars were used in various space-related black ops, including serving with the German Militia, and I can't pronounce that. I'll have her do that. Marsische Heimschild or something on Mars, and in deep space with both the German fleet, Nacht Waffen, and the mercenary group Kruger. Penny talks about the interactions between the various SSP factions, which is the secret space program factions, and their ET alliances and the ongoing wars in space. Sasha, sound check. Are you there, sweetheart?
Yes. I'm really looking forward to hearing you, Penny. What's happening is that there's a confluent field that basically people that have had experiences in programs and other dimensions are talking to each other and awakening their own memories, and the time is right because of the lineup of the galaxies for a real change in consciousness. And Penny is you've been on top of hearing everybody in this field that talks to you, putting it together, and of course you've got an incredible mind, and you can see where it's going and what's coming down in the general consciousness as experiencers start to really realize their coherence and how much power they generate from the information they're putting out to everybody. So I'm really excited to hear what's hot and new in your field.
Welcome, Penny.
Thank you. You got me blushing here, Sasha.
He does that.
That's okay. What's hot and new from the group was last November, a significant number of us in the secret group were having the same or overlapping events. And I wouldn't call them memories so much as impressions. And we were, there were several hundred of us that were all being taken in our sleep and used in space. And we kept coming back with this feel that we had failed miserably. And so the group had this depression about us. And this lasted from November the 5th through the middle of December. We figured it was about 45 days that every night we were taken. And so finally, some of us went to trance mode to try to retrieve memories. And it came back that Nacht Waffen had been attacked and that a couple of colonies had been completely destroyed. And we were being called into service to time travel before the attack to rescue the colonists. And you know that Nacht Waffen has allied with the Draco. And so the Draco were volunteering some of their ships to help us, and Kruger had volunteered some of their ships to help us. And even with all of this, we did not have enough physical ships to rescue all the colonists. And that was why we had the feeling that we had failed, was we simply could not do it. And so the group, well, I was really sick in those days because as a navigator in space, I ended up with a real world concussion from time travel because I was taking the ships into hyperspace and time traveling to do this. And the audience hasn't heard from me a long time because I was actually very sick. I have pernicious anemia, and during this time frame, my body stopped absorbing the med for it, and it took until March 1st for my doctor to realize what was wrong and change my medication. And I'm doing a whole lot better now. But between November and March, I was very sick. I really shouldn't have been doing anything in the public. But I was still monitoring the situation, both with my own awareness of what was going on and with what people in the group were sharing. And it's got the people that are attacking Nacht Waffen are the Galactic Police. You guys know that I've talked about the atrocities in the space programs before. Well, the Galactic Police are finally putting their foot down and saying enough is enough. And they ordered the Germans to vacate those planets. And they basically told up yours. And so the Galactic Police are destroying those worlds. And they are herding the German faction back into the solar system. I know there's a couple of people out there that are taking taking photographs of ships coming into the solar system through the sun.
Yes.
Those are the German ships coming back to the solar system with the people they've rescued from those worlds that were destroyed. So there's been a lot of time travel. There's been a lot of hyperspace. There's been a lot of being demoralized. The German faction has finally understood that there is someone out there in space more powerful than they are, and more powerful than the Drake. And so they are having to swallow their pride and actually be obedient. And this is not settling well with anyone in the faction, even those of us who are serving, because we've been trying to rescue our comrades and been unable to. And so the morale has just gone foot. And the things in the group got demoralized enough that Facebook offered us to make it a closed group instead of a secret group. And so we went ahead and did that. So now people can join without an invitation. So I'm having to spend a lot of my time screening out the people that will make fun of us.
Mm-hmm.
There's any time that you're in a topic that's out there, there's those who think that it's cool to make fun of you. And they don't really understand that this is very real to us. It's very traumatic. It's very hard to live with. And that this particular group is our sanctuary where we can be us without being made fun of. And so we admins are booting them right and left for making fun of us.
Janet's been having these dreams about rehabilitating people on another planet too. It just so dovetails with what you've been speaking about.
Well, I'm glad that it's not just the Nacht Waffen veterans that are feeling this, because with the time travel aspects, I know Tomas Alvin has talked about it in his occasional interviews, that the German fleet used time travel to establish these colonies. Some of these colonies are 400 years old and older, and they have just completely covered their worlds. Some of the colonies are so old and advanced that even the German fleet refers to them as independent countries. They have their own freedom. And all of those are being sent back to the solar system. You think Earth is crowded with 7 billion humans now. All of those people from the German colonies are being sent back to Earth. Some of them will be allowed to stay on some of the other planets, but all of the other planets in this solar system are owned by someone. It's not like we're alone out there. So
Penny, for the people just tuning in, maybe you can give us a little bit about the configuration of the solar system and what's going on and how far, give us a little history and background. You gave us the update, so let's get a little history and background for people who are just tuning in. I have a friend that's tuning in from Pennsylvania, and so I'm sure there's a lot more people just joining us for the first time. Penny's been on our show many times, and I encourage you to go back in our archives and listen to our shows with Penny Bradley. You'll find the links to the archives on aquarianradio.com, which you can search. And but anyway, go ahead, Penny. Give us a little background for the new people.
Okay, background for the new people is The point at which I can pick up the story in history is with Sir John Dee, and he was English, and he made contact with an interdimensional race that he thought was angelic. He called them Enochians, and he got a lot of tech through that contact. And when Queen Elizabeth I got mad at him, he went to stay with the guy that was ruling.
And you're kind of breaking up a little bit, and I can't hear you 100%. Are you able to hear?
I'm able to hear.
Sasha?
I'm gonna
hear me.
I'm gonna hold the mic. That'll help.
Because you're
getting
over
over.
it out. So when did this start? This was 1,000. You're talking about Elizabeth I. So what year are we talking about?
I'm talking about Elizabeth I. So, for reference, probably 1550.
And who was it that saw that? Say that name again.
Sir John Dee. And it's
D.
D. And he was Queen Elizabeth I's court magician. But in those days, science and magic were basically the same thing. And to be honest, to your average person on the street, science and magic are still the same thing. Your average person on the street cannot tell you why matches work. They cannot tell you why the fireworks are different colors. They can't tell you what colors glass. So as far as the average person is concerned, science and magic are still the same thing. And I know that's going to piss off a lot of science people, but it's still the truth. So John Dee was actually what we would call a scientist in the very early days. He was an alchemist, and the alchemists were who kept chemistry alive through the Dark Ages. So he was a scientist, but he was the first that we know of who did CE5. You know, the contacting extraterrestrials, contacting interdimensionals. So he contacted a group of interdimensionals that he thought were angelics. In fact, he called them Enochians. And we still have the books that he and his partner Edward Kelly wrote. And they're in Tudor English, but they're still readable.
Do you have the titles? Is there any way of getting those books?
They're available online. You just look up Enochian Magic.
Enochian. How do you spell that? E-N-O-K?
Enochian. You just do a Google search for Enochian Magic and then put PDF and it'll all come up.
Okay. Thanks.
And you look for the ones that are by John Dee and or Edward Kelly. There's a lot of people that have written about them. But that's where the contact with off-worlders in modern times started. So you have this thread from 1550 going forward through the spiritualists of America and Europe, and that would include Madame Blavatsky. And then in that tradition, you have Maria Orsic and the Frill Society, the Frill Gesellschaft of Bavaria. Well, when Queen Elizabeth got mad at John Dee, he went to stay in Bavaria. And when the Bavarian ruler got mad at him, he ended up in prison at the Vatican for a while, and eventually he was released in absolute poverty and disgrace. But this is where I've been able to trace it to. So you have this trail going through interdimensional contact for 400 years. And in the process, the Bavarian court ended up sucked into Prussia when Germany became an empire. And so those people who knew this information became the aristocracy. And so they were using their private fortunes to pay for building this tech. Now, I live near Sonora, and Mike Barra talks about the Sonora Aero Club. Well, I can tell you, I visited the cemetery, and yes, there are headstones with SAC on them. Mike's telling the truth. We did have a Sonora Aero Club, and when they decided to go back to Prussia with their discoveries, there were these sightings of UFOs all going east across the country and then east across Europe until they ended up in Prussia, and then all the sightings stopped. So it makes perfect sense that this was using this technology. And what they did was they discovered what's called red mercury, which is the fuel for the Glocke. That's the engines for the Haunebu spacecraft that the Germans started off with. So the Germans were actually in space before.
What is it? What is this red stuff?
They add this chemical to mercury, like regular liquid mercury, and it turns it red. And when it spins at a specific frequency, it makes the engine lift. It suspends gravity, and the engine will just lift under its own power. It starts off very slow and gains speed as it goes up.
So it's just an upraiser. It's not directional.
You can directional, but it's mostly just up. There are other engines that they use with it for directional.
Well, thank you.
The ships that we have now have usually 4 different kinds of engines that operate differently, and the mainstay is called the EM engine on Earth. And it's microwave
the M drive.
shot. Yeah, the M drive. It's, that's the mainstay of the interstellar ships these days. And
that's what Dan Cooper has a patent on, or at least he's working on it, trying to secure it, reinventing it because of we don't have it down in regular.
Well, he's going to have a tough time because the surface Earth militaries now have it. You remember last year or the year before when they had the Tesla shots? You know?
Yeah. The Tesla what? The shots?
Where they said that they lost the satellites and they got this teardrop shaped field. And then they had a little bitty circle that formed inside it. That is what the EM drive does. It forms it forms a teardrop shaped field in an atmosphere, and then that itty bitty circle thing is a portal that you can inside that field you can create a portal to go anywhere you want. And there's a map of portals that already exist. This is
Are they in different times? Are they just spatial coordinates, or are they time coordinates too?
They're time coordinates too. You can go anywhere, when.
Wow.
It's a combination of the ship's computer making the calculations and the psychic ability of the navigator. The combination is what takes you.
Wow.
The abilities of the navigator are also what keep you from being in the bulkhead, like what happened to the USS Eldridge. So that was what was wrong with the Eldridge, is they didn't have a navigator to keep everybody safe. But there's a learning curve with all this. So most navigators are Draco. I know 3 others that are human. And all of us were shot up with Draco DNA before we were born. So,
is that because the Dracos have extreme psychic abilities? I've encountered Dracos, and I through work on myself and hypnosis, I recalled why I was so frightened of the Draco, but because of their telepathic abilities are very intense. There's the Greys is more filtered, but theirs is just raw, and it feels like they're sucking their soul, your soul out of their, body. But that's just what it feels like.
Yeah, they practice full intimacy telepathy, which most races don't. But yes, they're extremely telepathic, and they're also domineering, and the combination can be really painful.
Right.
But that is the way they interact with each other. So this is their normal way of dealing with each other. And they just use the same approach to us. It's just normal humans are not hardwired for it. And if they're around a Draco for longer than a half hour, their nervous system fries. And so most Draco have stopped interacting with full humans. That's why so many of us in the programs were hybridized. And I put it that way, hybridized, because if they had not messed with me, I would have been full human.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make that.
They did that so you could be a navigator.
They didn't know I was. They didn't know I was going to be able to be a navigator. They wanted humans that could live around Draco without dropping dead. That was their goal.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
And being able to be a navigator was bonus. It was icing on the cake. Oh, goody, we got something really good out of this. So, because I have that,
you can look totally human, just for our listeners, and have alien DNA. So, just because you look a certain way doesn't mean you don't have DNA, which gives you certain capabilities. So, all right, so you have Draco DNA, and so the people that don't drop over dead when they interact with the reptilian probably have some kind of DNA. They're enhanced. So otherwise, most people do just they can't take it. It's so intense.
We're just not hardwired for it. And so when the CIA started picking up kids, well, they had chosen certain bloodlines that had high psychic ability anyway. And those were the families that they chose the first kids from. And the women's doctors would turn in when they got pregnant. And then the CIA would pick them up and shoot the baby up with the Draco DNA before they were born. So it would be embryo or early fetus stage. is when they would do it. My understanding is that whole thing in the 70s and 80s where they were abducting so many people and taking their genetic tissues, that what they were doing was setting up so that they could designer breed super soldiers from those, because they got tired of losing so many of us and not being, how many women can have 5-6 kids, So, So what they were doing was they would take your eggs and grow those babies in a test tube. And we've had the tech for that for a very long time. The Germans were raising clones during World War I. So we've had the tech to do it for a very long time.
Right.
That's one of the things that we got from the Enochians was how to grow clones. So there's been a lot of technology transfer, but people don't understand there have been super soldiers all along.
Enochian has Enoch in it. Enochian.
Yeah. They
so
claim.
What do you know about that?
What do I know about that? They claimed to be the angels that Enoch saw when he was taken to heaven. I do not know what race they actually are.
So Enoch was probably an Anunnaki taken to heaven in Nibiru.
Enoch was one of the Adamu that was part Anunnaki, yes. And he was, of course we get a phone call. I'm sorry.
We can't hear it, so don't worry about it.
Enoch, there's a set of books that are the story of Enoch being taken to Nibiru. And they're considered apocryphal by the Catholic Church and nonsense by the Protestant churches, but they are still available, and they're also online in PDF form in several languages. And they're well worth the read. So there's a lot of information out there. But super soldiers have been being created for millennia. I mean, Gilgamesh, Enkidu, Theseus, Perseus, Circe. There have been, throughout history, they've been called demigods because they were genetically modified humans designed to fight in war. And the females generally have high psi abilities and are called witches because of it. The only thing really different was that in the 1900s, humans started creating them instead of ETs.
Interesting. Okay, so we've had our program. Am I live? Is my mic on?
Yeah, you're on.
Yeah. Okay, I keep muting it and I forget where I was. Yeah, I trace it back with what's the name of the lady who used to make all the models, all the different aliens that she made.
I know.
Cynthia Crawford. Cynthia Crawford, before she passed, revealed to us that her father confessed to her that she was in a hybrid program and she had DNA from, I think, 4 species, including human. But he told her that he too was a hybrid. And so there was a ship off of the coast of Korea where they did a lot of this hybridization program. But he was my father's age, so my father fought in World War II, so probably born in, between 1910 1915 and 1925 or so. So this has been, this correlates your information. This has been going on for a long time.
Yeah, my understanding is that the actual creation of clones was going on during World War I because Hitler actually used a battalion of them in World War II. Mm-hmm. And it would have taken them, under normal conditions, it would have taken them 20 years to mature. So, because they were raising them like people. The space program now doesn't raise them like people. They speed up the bodies, so the body is complete adult size within 48 hours, but the mind hasn't had time to grow. And so they assume that that they're soulless, but they're not. They're a real person that just hasn't had time to grow yet. And then they stick somebody else's consciousness in on top of them like possession. This, in my opinion, is one of the atrocities in the space program. Is what they do to clones.
Yeah, John Titor said he woke up at 28 with a full set of memories, which he thinks was, they gave him a history so he'd have a reference point. Otherwise, okay.
Yeah.
But they accelerated him.
Yeah, that's what they do. They accelerate you and then they put somebody else in on top of you. So.
Okay.
And because I have alters who serve in space in clone bodies, I'll let you know you are possessing someone else. That someone else resists. It never feels like you are in your body. You are constantly having to stay dominant. So.
Are you writing a book on this? We need this information.
Yes, I'm writing a book on this. I was having trouble writing because I was sick, but I've got 20 pages, and I've been putting together the history. And I just had a friend who is one of the descendants of the Cathar throw me a curveball and say, well, when the French destroyed the Cathars, it was right after that the Teutonic Knights came up with the Order of the Black Sun. And I'm like, that makes just absolutely too much sense. And so that would push it back an extra 500 years. So I'm listening to this guy and I'm going, oh my, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I have a whole nother area that I'm having to dig in to get 3D historical proof of. But as far as where we are in space, because the Germans went back 400 years, we have colonies all the way to the rim in this arm of the galaxy. This arm of the galaxy is called the Sagittarius. And we're about, from the length of it, Earth is at about 1/3 the distance from the center of the galaxy on the arm. And so all of our colonies are rimward from Earth. And they're all being pushed back to the solar system now. But we have 3 that are outside the galaxy, and so far they're being left alone. So,
we have 3 colonies outside the galaxy.
Yeah. 3 colonies that are old enough that they are considered to be independent nations. And they are, so far they're being left alone. So,
so it's their age, how long they've been established that enables them to become independent? Is that what you're saying?
age, political stability, independence. They're self-supporting, self-sufficient. They engage the trade with us because they want to, not because they have to. They're able to defend themselves from any aggressive neighbors.
So isn't that something that people desire, civilizations desire, to be able to engage in trade, and they don't really grant that to everybody? You have to be at a certain level before you can be admitted to the, I guess, the federation or whatever you want to call it, so you can begin active trading. Is that true? I've heard that. Is that how it works?
Well, there are some that will trade with you even if you're not in the guild, so to speak. Randy Kramer's been talking a lot about the trade that his group is engaged in, and where they're selling children's clothes to short races
and beer and there was something else he was talking about, and that those races that they are trading with are saying humanity has to end slavery or they're going to stop trading with us. And well, aren't we being sold into the cosmos as slaves as well? Oh, yeah. Yeah, so who's got to end slavery besides us? What about the people that are buying the slaves? Yeah. What's being done to stop the intergalactic slave trade? Anything? He didn't even want to talk about the intergalactic slave trade. So at the last conference I was at with him, and on Easter weekend, I sat there and I said, you know, what Randy talks about is what his faction does. I'll tell you what my faction trades in. We trade in slaves. We trade in cyborgs, which are also still humans entrapped into a machine. And we trade in weapons. And we trade in protection racket. And there are entire star nations who are absolutely terrified of the Germans. I have brought ships out of hyperspace into orbit around the world. A world that was rebelling against Draco, and as soon as my ship showed up, they surrendered to the Draco. They did not. So who are the Germans that they're so powerful? I mean, isn't that just a human species? Or how did they get so powerful in the first place that other civilizations fear them? What happened? What happened? Yeah, give us some background on that. What happened was the German aristocracy saw that Hitler was losing the war, so they moved to Antarctica. And there was a Draco base next door to theirs. And they moved into Inner Earth, Agartha, or they pronounce it Agartha. And so they started developing a lot of compatible technology with the Draco. And they made it onto the moon and then Mars, and they had their bases in Draco territory because those places are already taken over by others. And once we were on Mars, well, where the Draco owned wasn't really suitable. And so the Germans nuked the native races and started that war and moved into their cities. And from that point on, they just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and traveling back in time and getting some of their own people from the past and
bringing me forward. And there were several plagues throughout the centuries that not as many people died as they have recorded, because a lot of those people were actually taken by the Germans and used in space. And, you know, once you factor time travel into the equation, it makes everything else possible. And that's the one item that people are just totally missing, is the Germans went back in time and quote unquote rescued plague victims. They did what they could to not destroy the timeline, but at the same time take as many humans as they could to their colonies, because they knew that their numbers in Antarctica, they did not have enough genetic diversity. And so
that makes sense. So they're harvesting humans from the past that would have died, would have disappeared, would have been buried or whatever, and they're taking them into. Now, how does that affect? And I don't know if you know this part. We cycle in and out of incarnation. So, how does that affect the amount of souls that can come back into the human experience on Earth? Give me an idea how that affects out.
I haven't really given that part much thought. What I do know is that once they have someone that they consider useful, that person is not allowed to reincarnate again. They're just done over and over and over and over and over within the program.
Mm-hmm.
I know someone who I cannot give her identity. Okay. But she works on the ship that picks up Nacht Waffen people for service. And she has told me that I personally, Penny, will never be allowed to actually die. That when I die, that they have tissue samples and that they will bring me back from the dead in space.
Because you're a commodity. You're too valuable to them.
Because I'm a navigator.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I have one altar that fried the commanding officer's head, exploded his head, just like a Draco would do. And I went through the court martial, and my defense was that it wasn't murder because I knew he would be regenerated. And they didn't buy that. And they executed me. They put me out the airlock, but they tied a rope around me. So when they knew I was good and dead, they dragged me back in and dumped me in the regen. And Will Glover serves with that altar. So.
Interesting, yeah.
I'm not allowed to die. I can die, but I'm not allowed to stay dead. And I'm certainly not allowed to reincarnate into something that they can't find. So
when you die, you just are experiencing the trauma of dying, but you don't really die.
I actually leave the body. The body's actually no longer functioning, and they bring the function back to the body and pull me back.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do get to cross over. I just don't get to stay there. And that's actually more torturous than if they had executed me.
Right. And so your experience is typical of a lot of people, or is it a rare thing?
If you are good at anything and you are valued by them, this is the experience you will have. If you're filler, You know, the guard that guards the door whenever you land on the planet. You know, the person that doesn't get any information. If you're one of those, they'll let you die. But if you're somebody that they actually think they need, and since I replace a Draco on their ship, they think they need me. So I will not be allowed to die ever. And there are days that I'm really pissed about it. And that this is an ongoing thing. During the November and December campaign to rescue those people, I was taken out 70 times. 70 times. And they were all 60 and back.
Wow.
And I had absolutely no control over that whatsoever.
So explain to people what 60 and back means. Some of our listeners might not know what that means.
Okay, a lot of people are talking about 20 and backs. That's for normal people. Normal people taken into the SSP are given a 20-year contract, and then they are returned to when they were originally taken in their original body and at the same age as when they were taken. And this is only possible because of time travel. Now, Nacht Waffen has people that are genetically able to deal with a longer contract time. And I don't know which genes are involved, so I can't explain that. But because of our modifications, we are able to go 60 years at a whack and not be crazy when we come back. Well, that was the big deal. Why did they switched everybody else to 20 years? Is because the normals, when they came back, were going crazy and killing their families. This was a serious problem. So they shortened the tour of duty until it got to where they weren't crazy when they came back. That was generally 20 years. So,
let me just pause you right there. Sasha, you're quiet. I know you want to say things. Comments?
Well, wait back there. Let's go back to Enoch. In the ancient Akkadian, that stuff that Zechariah Sitchin translated, we're talking about a person called Adapa, who was the commander, Enlil, or Yahweh, was down on Enki's case with the slaves that he had going, because the slaves in the commander's perception weren't very good because they kept going off and making their own lives, and there were mutinies in the gold mines in Southeast Africa and so forth. And so he kept saying, hey, listen, make better slaves. And by better, he means more obedient slaves. So Enki found two really beautiful girls down in his place in Zimbabwe, and he had kids with each of a kid with each of them. And this is the line of Adapa, who was so smart. He had his own Vemana. He was he trained all the others. He kept the books. He was an incredible genius, and he actually had a harp kind of a machine that he had worked with his dad on. And so they sent him. Anu wanted to see him. Enlil, Yahweh said, "You better check this guy out. Enki has created some dangerous creatures," and so he with Ningishita and Dumuzi, his two half brothers, Ningishita's Toth, they flew back to see Anu, the king, in Nibiru, and Enki had a little thing that he gave to Ningishita to give to King Anu. He said, "Don't give this guy immortality, and don't please send him back so I can breed from him. We want our genius here." And so they sent him back, and so that this got later on put into conflated status as Enoch, but it's the same story. And Sitchin felt it was really the same dude.
It probably was the same dude.
The other thing that I really was flashed on is how the angels were regarded as darn dangerous super soldiers who would zap people when they came to spy on Sodom and Gomorrah. The music played to stop in the middle.
Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Wadiya will remain a dictatorship. Oh, be quiet. Why are you guys so anti-dictators? Imagine if America was a dictatorship. You could let 1% of the people have all the nation's wealth. You could help your rich friends get richer by cutting their taxes and bailing them out when they gamble and lose. You could ignore the needs of the poor for healthcare and education. Your media would appear free, but would secretly be controlled by one person and his family. You could wiretap phones. You could torture foreign prisoners. You could have rigged elections. You could lie about why you go to war. You could fill your prisons with one particular racial group, and no one would complain. You could use the media to scare the people into supporting policies that are against their interests.
Tune in Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time for Liberation Nation with Deacon John, where America comes to hear the truth.
I know this is hard for you Americans to imagine, but please try.
Ohio Exopolitics will be on from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Studio A. Mark Schneider will have guests on that will discuss many important topics, including the state of the world today. However, much of the show will be dedicated to the writings of Edward Albert Meyer. Let me read a short passage from one of his writings. Love is the highest principle of creation, and through it, everything exists in absolute logic. All of nature in its indescribable splendor is nothing but the love of creation, which is expressed visibly. The love of creation is everywhere, because without it, nothing at all would be able to exist. Please join Mark on Ohio Exopolitics from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Studio A.
It is no secret that the so-called mainstream media is best described as controlled propaganda. Countless news stories are either totally ignored or spun with half-truths, and because of this, essential facts and vital information are often compromised. Join Dr. Ott every Friday night on Studio B at 10 p.m. Eastern and learn why The Story Behind the Story was nominated for a Peabody Award in its second year of producing unparalleled broadcasting excellence in 1997. That is, if you really care about learning the truth.
Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Extendivite really works. Just listen to what some people have to say.
Several years ago, I was developing a very severe situation. I called it my flippy heart. It just was doing not good things, and I did not want to go to a medical doctor because I just knew they would give me a cover-up pill. I didn't want to get onto that sort of thing at all. When I learned it was garlic and cayenne is a healer. It is a wonderful herb. I said, I think I'm onto something here. I'll tell you, I wouldn't be without it. It did wonderful things for me.
Extendivite is only $69.95 for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid. Call now. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha and welcome back to Stargate to the Cosmos. I'm your host, Janet Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lessin, and our producers, Thomas Becker. We're on Revolution Radio, and our guest is Penny Bradley. But before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to that donation button on revolution.radio and do make your donation, because we really need your donations to keep on air, to bring shows to you like this and many others. A Mad Painter, Thomas Becker, how are we doing with our fundraising at this time?
We got $932. We need $25.50. That's roughly about $17.20 to go. So.
Okay, come on down and give your donation. Okay, back to you, Sash. You were talking when we went to the break. Do you remember what you were saying? And
yes.
Can you wrap that up?
Yes, thank you. We were speaking about the super soldiers throughout history, and from my perspective, people, for example, at Sodom and Gomorrah that saw Nergal and Inerda spying to see whether or not they Sodom and Gomorrah had gone over to Prince Marduk. The people rioted. They thought they could catch these dangerous guys and fight them off. I mean, these people are really heavy. One of them, Angel, grabbed Muhammad by the throat and said, "Listen, boy, do what I say, or I'm going to kill you." And Joseph Smith had to deal with another powerful. These are people with high technology and super soldier enhancement. And they were dangerous dudes, but we find out again and again that there's usually hybrids that have been on both sides, like in the Trojan Wars. You see, there are super soldiers on both sides. So they've been with us for a long time.
Right. So this is Penny's bringing in this aspect of how we've had genetically enhanced beings walking among us, and that might shed some light on biblical stories like Samson and Goliath, right? I mean, what was going on there?
Well, I'm pretty sure that Samson was probably a super soldier. The things that you look for are, these were people who are said to not be the sons of their fathers. So they didn't look like their fathers. They're generally large. They're generally powerful. They are smart, they're psychic, they're strong, but they have personality flaws, as in they lose their temper really easily, and when they do, they kill people. Most of them cannot father children. The ones that do, the babies don't live long because their DNA has been messed with.
Interesting. So who are some of the historical super soldiers you've been able to identify?
Gilgamesh, Enkidu, his buddy, Hercules, Perseus, Theseus, Samson from the Bible, Goliath and his brothers from the Bible. There were so many of them in Canaan during the time of King David that he went through areas, and anybody that was over a certain height he killed because they were all super soldiers. The ones that were able to have living children were very rare, but those, what does the Bible say about the Nephilim? That those were of old men of renown. They were smart, they were big, they were powerful, they were able to do stuff that normals couldn't. And so most of them were well known. And that's just from the Middle East. Well, the eastern part of the Mediterranean. If you look through the mythology of the planet, they're all over the place. They're all over the planet. Every mythology has their demigods. And those are the super soldiers.
So that sheds new light on our history. Okay,
yeah,
so you're writing this book.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Our entire history as human beings, we have been considered raw materials for ETs to use, either as work slaves or as super soldiers in their wars. Humanity as we know it has never been a free race, and it's really a new thing that humans are now creating human super soldiers. This is a very new thing in our history.
Right. So,
and if you look at the super soldier community now online, you see the same kinds of things. They're very smart. They're very charismatic. They're usually bigger than the average. They're usually physically powerful. I've heard them described as sexy, the males. And
as what? You broke up. Say it again.
I've heard the males described as sexy. They have a sexy
male.
Look at Max Spears. He was a super soldier. And so we're looking at this whole segment of society. And what do they have in common? They're suddenly triggered and kill their whole families. So, this is a modern redoing of the same old story that we get from history. The super soldier goes crazy and kills their family.
Not good.
Yeah. So, part of why I speak is so the public knows that this is being done. So, hopefully, they can contact their Congress critter and have an investigation of the CIA. Because the CIA is who kidnaps all of us for service. That is the weak point in their whole thing, is Congress has oversight over the CIA. If they do it.
So what can they do? Because the Congress doesn't seem to be doing much with all
Congress has the right.
Legal actions, yeah.
Congress has the right and the obligation to supervise the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
You remember the Church Commission in the 1970s?
No, I don't.
That was about MK Ultra. Congress found out about MK Ultra. Well, they went through this, I think it was 4 years of investigations, and they told the CIA to stop doing this. Well, they ended the MK Ultra program, but they came up with MK Delta and MK Omega and MK this and MK that, and went way underground with it and started making them special access projects instead of just top secret. And Congress said, well, we told them to stop doing it. They're going to mind us. And they stopped looking. So it's been since, I think it was 1976, the Congress has been ignoring them. So they've had all this time to come up with all this other stuff that they've been doing too. And that was why I went public, was to say, this has to stop. This is wrong. The people need to know this is happening. And what I found in the 3 years that I've been public is that I'm simply entertained.
You broke up. Say your last sentence again.
What I have found in the 3 years that I've been public is that I have become entertainment instead of a explorer. And it's frustrating because I'm ringing the bell loudly about horrible atrocities, and people are like patting me on the back. Well, you're brave. Thanks for talking. And then going on like I haven't said anything. And it's frustrating. And it's like, okay, this could be happening to your children and you don't care. So, yeah, I have some anger over that. Mm-hmm. And it occasionally comes out. And so, yeah, I'm working on this book, and it is combining my memories with 3D real research. And I've been using source materials in German instead of what everybody else has been saying. So I'm going to be coming up with some very different conclusions from what the majority in history and the UFO community have agreed on. And they're not going to be very popular conclusions.
I like different.
I was at a conference in Las Vegas over Easter weekend, and I talked about a little bit of it. And the first time I logged back on Facebook after the conference, I was perma-banned. So
my God.
It's been a bit of a shock. I've had people tell me that what I'm now talking about is so far afield that they don't want to be associated with me at all. So thank you for not ostracizing me.
I think what you're talking about is fascinating.
And I did have a friend gift me an old copy of Microsoft Word, so my book will actually be in a format that can be published from. I had been writing it in rich text file and couldn't get the photos to stay with this print.
Yeah, you need good soft Word.
You need Word. So I'm really thankful to, and want to give a shout out to Valkyrie Ice McGill for doing that. Thank you.
Good.
And, what I found from our secret group is that the folks who have actually been in space and know what it's like, we tend to stick together, even if we served in different all over our lives, and have to live with that no matter what we think we're doing, that what we're doing in space is totally different. And for me, the hardest part is Penny here on Earth, I have an ethical compass.
Right, you do.
I have an ethical compass. I know right from wrong. I don't believe in killing people. I don't believe in going and be a dominant culture that eliminates other people's. And yet I know I have this altar that is out there that blows up worlds on command. And I, Penny, with the ethical compass, have to live with that.
Mm-hmm.
And people who are whole, who are not mind fractured, should be sitting there thinking whatever gods they worship, that they're not in my shoes.
Mm-hmm. It's not easy being Penny.
So.
It's interesting to think that we may all be fractured in a sense and have a part of us that is a prisoner and is being squelched and isn't being allowed to express itself in our ecology. As above, so within, perhaps.
Well, what I found for me is that since I started talking, I've made a tremendous amount of personal growth inside. And it's like opening the floodgate to what I had experienced allowed more of my soul self to come out. And it's been interesting to watch this happening to me. But it takes so much more energy that the physical body just doesn't seem to be able to keep up.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that New Age says that what you want it to be is what it's going to be, but I have not experienced that. So.
The one thing I'm picking up is that the pain and the infirm that you feel in your body as somehow goading you to finish this work and get it out there for your own health and the health of everybody and for the culture and for the planet. And there's this, basically what we're saying to people is that we need to stop murder and kidnapping and the terrible things that our government and the world is allowing to happen. And we have to stop these criminal things from happening. And that Penny is giving us the opportunity to see what's happening and demand information. And we don't want to hang anybody or kill anybody for their crimes, but we want the truth. And these people have to be removed from all authority over human beings because they're not coming from their hearts.
Well, I would like to see the atrocities stopped going forward. I wish I had the tech here that I have in space, and I would go back in time and change it myself. But I don't. I don't have access to time travel as Penny. But
right.
if
but
I
there
did,
is a party. There is a part of you that does.
But that part of me doesn't have an ethical compass. That part of me doesn't have an ethical compass. That part of me is thinking, oh, cool, we're ruling the universe. So.
Well, I'm sure there's a way to integrate, because there was a way of splitting. So the reversal is probably true. A way of integrating.
The splitting is done through trauma. They get you to a certain level of adrenaline in your system, and you either die or your mind splits.
Yeah, I understand that. I've been through a lot of it myself.
The other thing is that you have a possibility of putting an alternate program in your biocomputer if you can go back to the situation and give yourself an alternative that you can access, and it becomes real, and it's the balance, it automatically centers you. That's what we do in psychotherapy anyway.
Yeah. And one of the things I did when I met Dr. Lessin is I went through many years of reprogramming. And I know people don't always get to marry their shrink, but I did. So that's the way I came out the other side. But,
I'm living with my shaman.
Somehow. Yeah, you have your shaman. My fantasy is that someday we'll be able to offer this to people to help them come out the other side, to reprogram and to
there's
heal.
Millions of us.
Yeah. So that means we have to train a network of healers to, reach one, teach one, reach one, heal one. Everybody learns what we need to do this global healing. But it's possible. It's certainly possible. If humans, once they wrap their heads around something, can do everything. That's why they keep dumbing us down and putting programs in to make us think that we're less than what we really are. But we're pretty magical creatures that can do a lot if we put our minds to it. So that's why I kept asking, what can I do? What can I do? And my guide DTs just say, keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing these shows, because there is a critical mass point where everybody wakes up, and next thing you know, we're in a different reality, a different paradigm, one that's more kind and loving and supportive, and where these wounds are healed or on the road to healing. So you're very, very brave for coming out and saying this. I know it's not been easy. I don't know how long we've known each other now, a number of years, and we get knocked off the horse, but you just got to pick yourself up, and I've been sick too, and just I'm going to stop being sick now because I get too much work to do, because we're not dead, right?
Well,
they don't kill us; they just make us sick.
I've had this summer cold for the last week, and the second day I coughed so hard that an old mold infection broke loose, and I was like, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. I have an interview I have to do on the 11th. I have to be able to talk. and I have to be able to talk. And so I managed somehow to put that mold infection back inside its bubble and reseal it.
There you go.
So that was.
Well, you're a magical person, Penny. You have many abilities. Never doubt your abilities. You have many. Yes.
But 2 days ago, I wouldn't have been able to talk. I was just squeaking.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you've been able to talk. You're able to talk. So, let's see. We have about 25 minutes or so, 25 minutes. Where do you want to take this? What do you want our listeners to know about the program, what you've been through, what you're planning to do?
Okay, I have a free forum website. Space Portals with an S on the end of it, .net. And we have gotten donations, so we have upgraded, and we were able to survive the last DDoS attack. Yay!
Yay! Yay! Good.
And we have about 40 people that are on now, and nobody's complaining all the time anymore. So I guess we're open for business.
Excellent. Send me that link when you're done with the show, and I'll add it to the page that I've created for your show, which I will be promoting after the show. I couldn't do it during the show or earlier because my website was down too. Yay! So, lots of fun.
Well, I shared your link on my wall. Yeah, I'm back.
You got to it before I did.
I'm back on Facebook on a provisional profile, and it's not really mine. Someone else made it for me and gave me the login. Mm-hmm. And I'm not allowed to have pages. So I lost.
You're not allowed to have what? Say that word again.
I'm not allowed to have pages. Pages.
And did they give you a reason why they did that to you?
They said I'm too dangerous to be on Facebook.
Huh.
Yeah, they said I was too dangerous to be on Facebook. And they deleted my page, Truth Beckons, on June 3rd. Now, I did not own it outright by myself. I was partners with Wade Booth. And he has filed an appeal on it being deleted after I was banned. But, yeah, it was 600,000 followers. We had been in business since 2011. And no warning. It was just one day, it was just shut down. So, over sharing an article with a nude photo in it. That was what they told Wade. That we shared an article with a nude photo in it.
Oh, you bad girl, you.
Oh yeah. So, that's what their official reason for deleting it was. So, I had 7 pages that I was working, and it's like I have all this time to write now.
Get it written.
Yeah, I have all this time.
You can do it.
So, and just about the time I think I have it all figured out, somebody will throw me a curveball like Frederick Bichetti did about the Cathars. And, so yeah, the history goes way back, farther than people think. Humans have been living with soldiers and space programs since the Anunnaki. And, it's just most of us are clueless. And the community is so split about which ETs are here and which are not, and who's working with who, that when I do say what I know, they usually freak out at me. And there are a lot of people that are on the fringe that are they're hearing parts and mixing it all together, and it's frustrating because I spend so much time researching and going into my own memories, and I get it all straight and clear, where it makes sense, and then I hear what other people are saying, and I'm like, why am I even bothering?
Well, it's difficult not to buy in what other people say, but I don't know. I learned a lot from Dr. Lessin. Are you a sweetheart? What do you do about what other people say?
Oh, yeah. It's just it's so, in a way, it's so interesting how people come up with, like the guys at the beach say that Paul McCartney was driving his sports car and he ran into the trailer that was pulling this yellow submarine down the highway, and that's how he died, and they substituted the Paul. And it's just really fun. You don't have to get uptight about it, but underneath it, there's criminal activities that have got to be stopped, and the frivolity is just hiding how ugly it is underneath what's really happening, and that we've got to do something about it.
Thank you. That's what I've been trying to say, is we have to do something about this. This can't be allowed to continue. And what'll end up happening if it is continuing is that the Department of Defense plans on doing a hoax Manson invasion so that they can run the world. And we don't want a worldwide military dictatorship either.
But don't we already have one?
Actually, I think what we have is rule by Illuminati.
Right.
I think that's what we actually have. There are 30 different groups that are Illuminati, and they are constantly infighting. Each of them wants to rule the world. The last actual information I had was that the Fabian Society is actually in charge. And
who's the Fabian Society?
They're that secret that nobody knows who they are.
Okay, so it's not people that like the rock guy Fabian from the 60s.
No, it's not. Oh, yeah. That's what people will start saying, is that I thought Fabian ruled the world. And no, it's the Fabian Society. And he may have been named after them. But,
yes.
Yeah. The Fabian Society is who is behind it all. That's the most accurate information that I have. And that did not even come from humans. That came from the Galactic Police. So I would tend to think that they would know who was actually in charge.
So, are these humans?
The Fabian Society,
humans and extraterrestrials. Yes,
they're hybrids. And they're
human hybrids.
They're human hybrids, and they have dilute amounts of several races. So, including Anunnaki.
Right.
So, yeah. They're smarter than your average bear. And they have managed to be in charge, and nobody know who they are.
Do you know about the interplanetary corporate conglomerate?
They're not really called that.
They're not called that. Okay.
They're not called that. They're called planetary corporations. And they are the bankers in space.
So what do they? So they use money in space, you're saying?
Not exactly.
What do they use for exchange?
Human slaves.
So we're the chickens and the sheep of modern age.
We are the money. Yeah.
So
it's this. Okay, you remember that graphic that I did that around Christmas time, QAnon stole it and said it was the key?
No, I didn't get. You have to send that to me.
Okay, it was one of the graphics I used at Stargate.
Okay, I didn't get to see the whole thing, so I'd like to see that. Yes.
Okay,
you can send that to me individually. I'd like that. Yes.
Okay, I'll send that to you individually. But it was a map of the interactions between the different factions in space. And planetary corporations is the bankers in space. Or if you watch Star Trek.
Yes.
Okay. In Star Trek terms, Nacht Waffen are the Romulans.
Okay, good. We can put it in terms that I can relate to.
Okay. Nacht Waffen are the Romulans. The SS are the Vulcans. The Draco are the Klingons. Starfleet is Solar Warden. The Ferengi are planetary corporations. They laid it all out for you, and all of these are basically humans. Not even okay. That's those are the basics.
Oh, you're breaking up again. Where are you going?
And
we're Pejorans. We're Pejorans.
You're Pejorans. Maybe. So what you have is all of these different groups that each have their own agendas, and they don't really get along. And the more research I do into the history, the Germans went into space to get away from the bankers. So the bankers are following them. And the Americans are following them. So it's basically World War II in space. That's what we've got going.
Okay.
And then, because all of these guys have been doing really bad things all along, you have the Galactic Police saying, enough already, you're going home.
So how many are they sending back to Earth? Did you have a number, approximately?
I do not have a population figure, and it's going to be throughout the solar system. And any overflow... We're talking billions.
Billions. So we're not going to be able to fit this.
They're not going to fit here. We're talking billions, trillions, maybe more. And depending on how many, they won't fit here. And so it's major population influx into the solar system. And it's going to be a major, major mess because you've got so many factions, and they're all going to be trapped in the solar system together. So
how many colonies do we have in the solar system? Are all the planets inhabited? Are there things inside the Earth, under the waters? What are we looking at?
There's stuff everywhere. Everywhere. Every planet, every major moon, most of the asteroids are all inhabited. And they're not all inhabited by humans. Okay? Nacht Waffen was not allowed on Venus or Saturn. But I understand other humans are. NASA is not allowed on the moon because they nuked the place. So I don't know.
Is that what's going on?
I don't know what what Trump's Space Force is going to do there, but maybe they got something worked out. I kept wondering what was going to happen with Elon Musk's group that was going to go to Mars. You know, when were they going to be told about the colonies that were already there? And
what do you think is going to happen?
What I think is going to happen is they're going to tell the Martian Militia that they're on their way, or the Martian Militia is going to blow them up out of the sky. Marsische Heimschild is not very tolerant of invaders. So you have to tell them you're coming. You have to get permission to land. Otherwise, you're blown up.
So you think somebody will tell them, or they'll just let them all get blown up?
Well, he's charging $250,000 per person to go, so I hope he tells.
To go and get blown up.
I hope.
Does he know?
I don't know. I don't know what the man knows. I don't know if he's been read into it. I don't know what he knows. But I'm saying we've already got 10 million Earth humans on Mars. You better talk to him, or you're going to be shot.
Wow.
That's like when J.P. Morgan invited all his rivals to have the best rooms on this new liner that was going to go off to Alaska, but he didn't get on at the last minute. There's also the possibility.
Titanic.
Titanic. But there's people that live in space. They have their entire lives on these wonderful, huge, planet-sized craft that are in space too. It's not just there's got to be a moon or a planet.
There does have to be a planet. You cannot live permanently on a ship.
Yeah. How often do you have to make? How often do you have to make landfall if you have one of these great big things?
Even with the great big things, you can live on it, but you have to go through regen so often that it's ridiculous because of the radiation. It's not a place. It's not a place to have children. It's not a place to raise kids. It's not a place to live long term. Those are military facilities. Those are not habitations.
So they're not able to keep out the radiation on a ship? What is it that keeps...
Most of the radiation is from the ship's... Most of the radiation is from the ship's engines. The reason that we have regeneration tech is because the Germans went into space with the Glocke in saucers and not enough shielding. And the crews were dying from radiation sickness right and left.
Mm-hmm.
And the Mantids took a look at this and said, these guys are really motivated. Here, let's have mercy on them and give them a regen tank. We didn't come up with that tech. We were given that tech because the Mantids felt sorry for us.
So, what do they use to protect against radiation? Or are there species that thrive on radiation?
There are
species that
thrive on radiation. One of them is the Draco.
Okay, so if you have Draco DNA, are you more, resilient? You can be out there?
I don't know. I can be out on a ship longer, yeah. There have been people that have fussed at me about it because, well, why doesn't she have to leave? And they say, she is chipped into the computer. She can't leave. So, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
They have a chip on me while I'm in space. It looks like a Bluetooth and it's behind my left ear. And when I change ships, they have to change the Bluetooth to link me to the computer. Because as navigator, the computer does all the math and I do the PSI.
So let me just understand that you had colleagues or people that were serving that would actually complain to some authority about your being privileged, and so that's really sounds unusual for a military sort of situation. Could you complain to your officers?
They're still people.
So you're allowed to state your grievances if you had them.
Yeah, as long as you were respectful and took whatever decision that the officer had made.
Got it.
So even though we're slaves and we're a commodity, do we have any rights?
You have the right to be regenerated if you die.
You have the right to be regenerated?
Yeah. That's how they view it. You have the right to be regenerated if you die. Unless you're executed.
All right.
If you're executed, your rights are gone. People think that the German fleet are Nazis in space. They're not. They're Teutonic Knights in space. They're not any nicer, but the culture is different. They are...
Okay, tell us the difference between the
Teutonic
Knights.
The Teutonic Knights were a German tribal society where the knights were the heads of the tribes. But they could be deposed through battle. So, they had all these abilities that they were taught because they were an occult society, the Teutonic Knights were. But they were formed during the Crusades because the Germans had just accepted Christianity within 100 years before that. And so these Teutonic Knights were coming out of this tribal society. And these were the hot soldiers. The ones that knew what they were doing and embodied the cultural expectations. And they were going to defend this new faith that they had recently endorsed, and they were going into the Middle East where they were outrageous soldiers and decimated lots of people. And when they came back to the German tribes, they thought they were hot stuff, and they brought back a lot of information that today we would call alchemy. And they also had interacted with the English and the French and the Spaniards and the Italians and everybody else that had come. And they had learned to speak Latin and they had learned Arabic. They had suddenly become cosmopolitan. And so they come back to these tribes. And so they had more in common with the ruler of their visiting tribe, their neighboring tribes, they did their own people. And so they formed these secret societies. And they were never what you would call Christians. Christianity was a veneer on top of the tribal. And so when they went into space, the officers were mostly Order of the Black Sun. If you were above a commander, you were Order of the Black Sun, which is an occult group. Okay? And if you were enlisted, you practiced Asatru, the tribal religion of the Germans and Scandinavians. So they do worship Odin, they do worship Thor, they do worship Leia, and every ship has their altar for each of those gods. Now, if you look through the mythos for these beings, they're all Anunnaki.
Right, they're Anunnaki. I was just going to say that.
Loki is Ningishzila. So, and you can work it from there, you know? So,
right.
The enlisted in Nacht Waffen are all doing Asatru. And the officers...
They're doing what?
Asatru. That's what the faith is called. Asatru. And don't
I said acid trips.
Don't
They're all doing acid trips.
Don't look it up on Facebook because they will assume you're a skinhead and ban you.
Huh. Okay.
So that's fair warning. And
Don't look it up.
So they are a warrior society. They train their people. When I was taken to Mars, I was put in Shula for 10 years before I was ever put to battle. They're educated, cosmopolitan. Everybody knows their stuff. Nobody there is stupid. They're not prejudiced. They treat everybody fairly. The only beings that they treat poorly are people who are hybrids, because they take pride in being 100% pure, caring human.
Oh, okay.
So they called me a Miskover because I had been shot up with Draco. Not because my grandmother was Jewish. They didn't care my grandmother was Jewish. They cared that I had been shot up with Draco.
So they were afraid of you. They didn't trust you.
They didn't trust me because I was American.
Because you're American.
Yeah, there were problems with the Americans after the war that most Americans are clueless about. But when you start looking into the German source documents, you find proof of a lot of things that Americans are absolutely clueless about. And they are the reason that the Germans in space do not trust Americans.
Well, we're going to run out of time here. We have 2 more minutes. So what would you like our people to know in the last few minutes? And then we'll have to do an outline and cover this information every time, because it seems like this goes on. And
it does.
Making sense of it. Yeah.
What I want people to know is that there are lots of us who have been out there. We have varying amounts that we remember because the CIA never intended for any of us to remember any of it. Most of us are very damaged. If you've got somebody talking to you that thinks they have all the answers, they're lying to themselves at best.
How is it that we do remember? You said we're not supposed to.
Some of us, our higher self is insisting we remember.
There we go. So it goes beyond this matrix.
It goes beyond the matrix. And my memory was brought back by an NSA agent on purpose, and I still don't know why.
Interesting. And your book, do you have a working title, or when it might be available? 6 months, 3 months, 2 months?
I'm thinking about a year, and
about a year, okay.
And it's painful to write. And I do have a publisher interested out of New York. And I'm calling it My Life in Nacht Waffen.
Interesting. Thank you, Penny. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Sasha. Penny. Thank you, listeners. We'll see you again on Sunday. Much love and blessings, and aloha.
You'll remember, for you to remember, time that's for you to remember.
Hello, hello, check, check. Check, check, 1, 2. Check, check, 1, 2. Hello, hello.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
Hello, hello.
Right back after this message.
Check, check, 1, 2.
an anarcho-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week. Yes. But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting. Yes, I see. By a civil majority in the case of purely internal affairs. Be quiet. But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more quiet. I order you to be quiet. Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look! Just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill. No, it's great. Stupidity.
I'll do you for that. Oh, what? Come here. What are you going to do? Bleed on me? I'm invincible. You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs.
Roundtable Live Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
Most guys freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. Your heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling you to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting to danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution. Radio.
The original machine had a base plate of prefamulated amulite, surmounted by a malleable logarithmic casing, in such a way that the two spurving bearings were in a direct line with a